Hey Dunchbags, what's going on? It's Landon Remixes here, and welcome to my review of the sophomore album from the world-famous DJ producer Matt Zo. This one is called Self-Assemble. And by means of the title, this album kind of seems like Matt Zo's trying to say, this is my album, I did this by myself and on my terms. And for the most part he did, whereas his debut album Damage Control, which is actually one of my favorite EDM albums, probably of all time, had a lot more collaborators on it and even included a co-producer for one little part on the track Easy with Porter Robinson, which can be thanked because that is one of the best tracks on the album and one of the staple house tracks of the last decade probably. This one is entirely him. He did it on his own terms and did it on his own record label, which is actually pretty impressive for the most part, kind of doing what he wants rather than what the labels want. Matt Zo actually seems to be taking a step backward with this album, whereas Damage Control was a lot more diverse and delving into so many different styles. He went into dubstep, he went into progressive house, he went into that funky house, he went into Middle Eastern and Egyptian sounds. He was all over the place with that album, just experimenting with all different kinds of things. And it worked out really well because I don't even know if there was a single bad track on that record. In the meantime, this one seems to be progressing a little bit toward the way where he started his label Mad Zoo, with tracks like Get Down to Get Up with the Knocks. And for a lot of the parts, I feel like that's what Matt Zo's trying to do with this. It's very French house and classic house centered, kind of taking inspiration from artists like the Knocks, but he doesn't do it quite as well as they do because artists like the Knocks are able to make really awesome pop records, kind of delving into lots of different styles, whereas Matt Zo kind of stays in the EDM genre quite a bit in this album. And he starts the album with Order Out of Chaos, which is extremely experimental, kind of ambient and all over the place in terms of the sounds that you're getting. And following that, the majority of the album is this kind of standard French house sound. And I did like a couple of those tracks, but for the most part I didn't love them. Sinful featuring Icy Monsters, Icy Monsters being an artist who's worked with Knife Party on tracks like Superstar and Botneck on their recent single on Monster Cat Deeper Love. The vocal appearance on this one is actually pretty cool, and this track is extremely catchy. I will admit that. Soul Food, another one of those kind of more French house tracks, is also very catchy as well. While The Enemy seems like it's trying to go a little bit toward that direction, it takes a little bit more of an indie dance spin and actually makes it one of my favorites on the record just because it's so different from everything else that we're hearing on this. And just like Damage Control, this one is very interlude sounding, except I don't think the interludes on this one were nearly as powerful as the ones on Damage Control. Shorter tracks were some of my favorites on the album. These ones seem a little bit just thrown in, especially on the outro. The Last Transmission, Patterns Emerging, and Smacked Up on Jack aren't really doing a lot for me. In fact, the only interlude track that's really doing anything for me is the intro to this album. As well as the VIP for Roughneck Bad Boy, I don't really see it's not bringing much to the table that the original didn't, in my opinion. I expected this one to be a lot more crazy and out there, and it ended up just falling a little bit flat. Lights Out is still kind of staying in that house genre, except a little bit more darker and a little harder than most of the other brighter French house tracks on the EP. Stereo No Aware is also one of the more interesting tracks on the record, probably one of my favorites as well, just because it sticks out like a sore thumb compared to the rest of the album, just being so different than most of the material we're getting on this. Of course, it's still kind of in that house genre, but you'll have to listen to it for yourself to actually hear what I'm talking about. Now, Too Late, just about the closing track on this record, other than the kind of disappointing closer, is actually one of my favorites on the record. This one is insane. It's all over the place. The vocals sound extremely fresh. The melodies are all over the place and pitch adjustments and everything. This one goes absolutely hard, and I think it would have made an amazing closer. Really probably would have chopped out The Last Transition if I were Matt Zo. But then again, he does what he wants. This is his Self-Assemble album. He only had 2 features on this entire thing, Icy Monsters and Sined Egan, which was impressive for the most part. I have to congratulate him on that. Also, I would have loved to see a more extended version of the track Smacked Up on Jack, because that kind of takes that same Egyptian / Middle Eastern style that he was going for in a lot of places on Damage Control. It's kind of disappointing to see a track like that go to such waste being so short. I did like it though. Overall, this one does make an interesting listen, but definitely not one of my favorites from the year. I expected a lot more from Matzo, especially over the last couple years. He's been hyping, just saying his upcoming album was going to be a huge deal, and I really feel like he fell flat on it, just going backwards from Damage Control. I'm feeling a solid 6 on this one. Like I said, make sure to check out the album. I have the Spotify link in the description, so go listen to it. And let me know what you think in the comments. Anyway, thanks for tuning in. I'm Landon Remixes, and I'll see you guys later. Peace.